Welcome back. Uh, Again, this is Rance Adams, and I'm creating these podcasts uh, with content being spirituality and more specifically Christianity. And what I'd like to talk about in most of these podcasts are the principles of Jesus. And basically, that I have the belief that the principles of Jesus, his actual teachings, his words, and his life, his actions, how he lived his life, are what we should pattern our lives after. And his principles are the principles that we should implement in our life as the foundation for the decisions that we make. That his principles are the principles that we use to make decisions, to use in determining what we do in different situations that we are faced with on a daily basis. One of the principles that we see throughout the New Testament in Jesus' life is his concern and his love for his fellow man. And for my discussion, it is my belief, and the Bible has scriptures to support this, that Jesus, in fact, was a man, that he was human just like you and I were. He experienced the same things we experienced other than sin. And so that's why I say his fellow man. That Jesus had a sincere compassion, a sincere love for man. And could almost be said, and it's my belief, that that is really the foundation. That's the, better put, the essence of Jesus. The essence of Jesus is he was a servant to others. He put himself second to everyone else. And what caused him to do that was his love for other people. And the ultimate example, the culmination of his love for man, was his torture and death, and his taking on the punishment of mankind, even when he didn't deserve it. His punishment in our place. He was sinless. He lived as a human, but he lived perfectly. Yet he suffered the punishment that we deserved, according to God. And it's that act that shows us how much he loved us, that he would take upon the sin of all of man, take upon himself the punishment because he loved us so much. And as Christians, we are followers of Christ, and so we follow his example. And so this is the ultimate example that Christ gave us, and that is dying for man, having so much love that it causes one to die. And so in our lives, if that were to come up, that should be what we would be willing to do. The main point is that our attitude towards one another, our attitude towards man, should be so great that it would cause us to die, to take upon punishment for someone else, that it would cause us to be a servant to everyone else, that the love that we have for man would be so great that we're willing to put others before ourselves and take the punishment, whether it be great or small, for someone else. And this is the ultimate act of love that Jesus has given us, and that is his death, his unjustified death for us. And so that's the principle. That's one of the principles that I want us to consider. And what's so very important in Christianity is to seek out in God's Word the principles that he is trying to give us, and to implement those principles in all facets of our life. The principles that God gives us, the principles that we see in Jesus' life, are not relative to certain situations. They are absolute principles. So no matter the situation that we find ourselves in, these principles that Jesus has given us, that he has shown us, are applicable in any and all situations in every man's life. And that is a very key component to Christianity. It is not relative. These principles are not principles that we can pick and choose which ones we want to follow or implement in our lives, nor are they principles that we can choose in what situations we use them. Because where do we find that? In God's Word. We don't. We don't find where the principles that God has given us are relative. They are absolute. So, you can take the principle of loving your fellow man unconditionally, of being a servant to your fellow man. That is a principle that should be applied to all facets of our life, whether it be something as trivial and minute as standing in line at the grocery store and you see maybe a physically challenged person or an elderly person that you perceive could benefit from being expedited in the line and getting checked out, so you allow them to get in front of you. Something as small as that, or something as significant as putting yourself in harm's way for someone else. So, throughout our study of Christianity, we must keep in mind that all principles that God has given us are absolute, that they are applicable in all aspects of our life, that you can come up with 100 different scenarios and the answer is always the same. It does not matter what the situation is, how far-fetched it may be, how unusual or unique a situation may be. If we are to abide by Christ's life as Christians, if we are to call ourselves Christians and be followers of Him, then the principles that He has given us, that He has shown us, those principles are to be implemented in all situations of our life.